I love this outfit so much. I could never wear it normally because it's from another country, but maybe I can wear it as a Halloween costume.
I don't know that Halloween is the time or place for that outfit.
Then I can never wear it? But it's so pretty.
It is gorgeous, and you absolutely should get an accessory or some jewelry, but don't wear the whole outfit on Halloween.
I don't get it. If it's not okay to wear on Halloween, doesn't that mean it's just not okay?
Halloween costumes are about jokes and caricatures and not really for good faith cultural exchange. I think all the artisans who want your support would rather you buy pieces that you would wear in your daily life.
I could do that? I could totally do that. It's a good thing I like shopping because I have no idea where to get things like that.
Well, I hope your wallet is ready because I am about to link you to so many places to buy pieces to wear.
Hello and welcome to SnappyDragon Studios, where we would very much like to not accidentally do a racism. I'm V, and here on the channel today we have a special guest, Miah Grace.
Atito, hello, I'm Miah Grace, in case you don't know. I worked in community and local theaters for about 10 years, and I happen to be Appalachian Siouanwi, but that is definitely the least interesting thing about me. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk about the bane of my spooky season, which is every single year watching people have the same argument over and over again. A while ago, I did a video that wound up doing really, really well about why you should definitely never dress up as Pocahontas, and people had a lot to say about that. So we're here to clear the air about some of the things you can do.
Every Halloween, there's always this debate about Halloween costumes and dressing up either as a member of another culture or as a stereotype from a marginalized culture, or even just in clothing pieces that are not from your own culture. We're pretty sure that if you're watching this video, you understand on some level that dressing up as a racist caricature is bad, but the conversation kind of tends to stop there. There's a lot of people who just think that clothing and decorative arts from backgrounds that aren't theirs or places they don't live are really pretty, and that's because decorative arts from places all over the world that not everybody lives in are really pretty.
It's really wonderful to be able to engage with an aesthetic that's new to you or exciting, and cross-cultural aesthetics are definitely great to pull from.
Culture is not a costume. Okay, what is someone supposed to do with that energy of finding decorative arts from places that are not in their background to be beautiful? When someone has that interest, what they're told is, this makes you a bad person, then they sort of have two paths forward. Either they can see themselves as a bad person, or they can go, this is woke nonsense and cultural appropriation doesn't matter, and I'm just gonna wear whatever I want, even if there are people who say it's racist.
A lot of people are so afraid of being perceived as misstepping or being called racist that they will, in fact, just dump the whole baby out with the bathwater. More frequently, though, they do wind up stepping into misappropriation, and I think both are a real shame because there's so many ways to really, engage with and study and enjoy another culture's clothing practices.
What do you do that's actually positive?
The secret third option, learning something new about a whole culture outside of your own and engaging with it respectfully. I think that's the dream. That's what everyone wants.
We do love learning in this house. So thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes on everything from graphic design and entrepreneurship to flower arranging and embroidery. My path to making videos like this one started out with watching instructional videos. It's a really effective way for me to learn things. The first class I took on Skillshare was while I was working on a hand sewing project. So I got to learn about and try out new filming techniques as I documented the garment I was making. This month, I'm doing 3 videos instead of the usual 2. Yes, there will be a bonus video this month. Check the community tab for more info. So getting things done without exhausting myself is extra important. The class Make Your Art, Time Management for Creatives by Liz Brindley gave me some really great ways to reframe how I think about time management. If I'm stressing about whether I'll have enough time to sew something really neatly or color grade a video perfectly, I'm less likely to pick it up, and then I will be more rushed. Whereas if I just pick it up and do something, anything with it, I can get into the flow and the project will not only get done, which if you're watching this video, it has, but turn out better. Want to unlock your creativity and learn something new? The first 500 people to use my link will get access to one of Skillshare's best offers. 30 days free and 40% off your first year of Skillshare membership. Fashion, clothing, hairdressing, jewelry, vary so much. It shows both like different cultures' perspectives and also different parts of the world you're gonna have different materials to work with.
Different materials are a huge reason why I personally am attracted to some cultures outside of my own. When I'm thrifting, if I find something that is made in India in the 90s, it's coming home with me because I love the breathable fabric and I love the way that it lies.
Europe literally conducted industrial espionage in like, I think it was the 7th or 8th century to steal silkworms. Silk producing countries had Europe over a barrel as far as what Europe was required to pay if they wanted the pretty thing.
I think a lot of people will learn at a very surface level. Like, I like how this looks, I like how this makes me feel, I like the caricatures or the tropes that I associate with the maybe not super respectful media associated with that culture.
I think it can deepen your appreciation of something a lot to understand why it is the way it is. Like, that's what got me into fashion history and what keeps me in fashion history.
We're both very much the personality types that want to jump into something. Whenever you like something, you want to learn every possible facet about it.
It's not for everyone about everything. There are some people that just want to wear the pretty clothes.
Giving those people a little bit of a hand, a little bit of a gesture of like, hey,
some tools to work with. This is almost like a set of questions that you can ask yourself to sort of figure out, like, is wearing this thing from another culture, is it possible for you to wear that respectfully? And is the way you're thinking of doing it, wearing it respectfully, or should you do it differently or maybe not do it? We can't necessarily tell you in every instance you should do this or you shouldn't do this.
Sadly, we have not found a way to clone ourselves, shrink ourselves down, and put us in your pocket in case of emergency.
You just have a little SnappyDragon sitting on your shoulder giving you fashion advice.
I would love
That's like my $1,000 a month Patreon reward. Why does this always come up around Halloween?
There's so many reasons, you know?
The purpose of Halloween is you're dressing up as something that is really different from how you are and how you dress in everyday life. Things like Renaissance fairs and opportunities like Halloween are often when people end up dipping their toes into some kind of alternative fashion.
I used to work in a goth shop that primarily sold corsets, and every year we would have at least 1 or 2 people come through and they would say that they wanted a corset for Halloween, and we would fit them up with one. And these were nice corsets, like the kind that you could wear for daily wear. And there was one lady who wound up getting this over-the-top corset that had like the buckles and really great fabric to it. Like, it wasn't just a plain black one. And she came back 4 months later wearing the corset and told me all about how she's been wearing it, and she wears it to the office even. And Halloween was just like that first step that she needed to take to step into something that she really loved and start to change her wardrobe to actually reflect who she wanted to look like and the version of herself that she saw when she like closed her eyes and imagined.
When people are thinking about a style that is very different from what they're accustomed to, oh, Halloween costume is the first place they'll go with it.
How many goth kids started out with a vampire Halloween costume that they just never took off?
A thing that comes up in my comments section a lot, it's racist and not good to wear this thing from this culture. But what's the deal with people who aren't Scottish wearing kilts? What's the deal with me, no Scandinavian ancestry, wearing Viking age clothing? Some people are using this as a straw man.
It's not worth our effort to even try to address that crowd. When we're talking about Halloween costumes, we are talking about a very highly specific thing that is different from cultural clothing or just regular clothing. When you're wearing a costume, you're not yourself. Like at almost every intertribal dance, they're going to talk about the clothing that's being worn. It is specifically not a costume, even though it is very loud, it is very highly decorated, and it is only worn in hyper-specific contexts. The word costume is never used because it is specifically a deeper reflection of oneself. You put on an inflatable Patrick Star costume, and that is also very different and for a very specific context, and it is hopefully not who you are.
When you describe a costume, you are answering the question, who or what am I dressed as?
Yes.
When you're describing clothing, you're answering the question, what am I wearing? Costumes are kind of by their nature, like they're over the top, they're outlandish, recognizable cultural tropes for better and for worse. Sometimes they run into the stereotypical, sometimes they're based on figures from mythology, sometimes they're symbolic or archetypal, and sometimes they're caricatures. Clothing is what occasion are you dressed from? Where in the world is it from? Where in the world is it made? What level of formal is it? Putting on a 21st century evening gown is not a costume, it's clothing.
Whenever I go to a Lolita tea and I'm wearing a big old hoop skirt and I've got a million layers on, that is not a costume, that is just clothing that is appropriate for a high tea. I'm dressed as myself, I just happen to be fabulous.
The third piece that applies, context. What and why and when and how are you wearing whatever it is that you're wearing? Where are you? Who are you? What occasion is it? It's how the world is going to perceive you given all of the social forces in play and all of the history. There are nations that have and still are subjugating and oppressing other nations. And the present world is very shaped by the fact that this happened. If people who look like you did this to people who look like whatever culture whose decorative arts you're interested in, that is a reason to be very careful, because you probably don't want to look like another instance of people who look like you being nasty to people who look like them.
It can be harder to think of yourself in a broader context like that. Sins of the father comes up a lot of like, oh, well, I didn't do it. I myself am profoundly white passing, and I try to walk through the world as if I were a white person, because for most people, that's how I'm going to be perceived. I've always been very cautious about making the jokes that someone like my sister, who is not as white passing, might have made, because I knew that it just wasn't going to land. I don't really feel like I'm missing out on something, because the way it would be seen would make everyone so uncomfortable that it's just not worth dipping a toe into. There's
this concept in comedy that's called punching up.
Yes.
That, like, if you're gonna make jokes at the expense of something, it should be something that has more social power than you. Punching down is taking disrespect and compounding it. The other reason why sometimes the answer to the is there a respectful way to wear this is no, there just isn't, is the concept of open versus closed practices.
This is very, very important. And outside of even costuming, I see a lot of confusion about what the difference between an open and a closed practice is. Attending an open invitation intertribal powwow, that is open practice. We love to see people show up. We love to see people attend, versus an actual religious event that I wouldn't even refer to in a public forum like this, because they're kind of sacred.
There are certain garments in a lot of traditions where it's like, you don't get to wear this unless it's like a recognition given to you by your community, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everything is earned.
Something like that would be a closed practice.
Absolutely. To use the headdress example, because that's the one everyone's familiar with, literally every bundle of eagle feathers is earned. Every single one of those represents an act. And then there's color language associated with it. It's all going to have come from different people. Like, it's very highly significant. To be fair, I'm not from a Plains tribe, but that is the example that everyone's familiar with.
My favorite example, kilts.
Yes.
Kilts are both an open and a closed practice depending on different factors. Such a good example of the questions you sort of have to ask. Someone of Scottish ancestry would be considered white. But there's a massive history of cultural oppression there. Literal cultural genocide committed by a neighboring nation outlawed a lot of the cultural practices. So there's both marginalization and power going on in the same place. Kilts tend to stand out a lot. They're not considered like daily wear in most places. Some types of kilts are a closed practice. It depends on like what fabric it's made out of. So a lot of the tartans are associated with particular clans, particular lineages, particular family groups. And if you don't have ancestry from the group associated with a particular tartan, it is disrespectful to wear it and you shouldn't do it. That's misappropriation.
100%.
But plenty of people wear fashion kilts that are in solid colors or different fabrics, or tartans that are not associated with any particular group. That is not considered appropriation, and people of all sorts of background do it, and it doesn't hurt anyone. Kilts are great.
Kilts are wonderful.
The other thing that tends to come into it is stereotypes.
Yes.
Especially the ones that are like really, really prevalent and really, really untrue. The terrible Viking costumes with the horny helmets.
Yep.
Wearing a crappy Viking costume is not going to contribute to the structural oppression of the Scandinavian people because, to the best of my knowledge, the Scandinavian people have never been structurally oppressed on account of being Scandinavian.
Good for them.
It is likely to annoy Scandinavians and historians alike because that's a stereotype and, to the best of our knowledge, was never a thing. If somebody makes well-researched Viking age clothing with the apron dress and the tortoise brooches and whatnot and wears it a la the SCA. This is not disrespectful because it's not hurting anybody. You're doing the thing correctly. There is no structural oppression that you're contributing to. It kind of doesn't matter what your background is.
Well, no, because you're just participating in textile anthropology at that point.
There's broad social context, like the major social power forces, world history, and then there's specific social context. Why are you wearing this outfit on this day?
That one is almost easier to get a read on. Where am I going? What are the people going to be wearing? What cultural dynamics are at play?
The first thing that I would want to ask myself is, am I standing out more or less? Am I going to get praised in some way for doing something different by wearing what I'm wearing? Or am I looking to fit in?
You're trying to avoid the main character moment. You just want to be part of the environment,
Yes.
Part of the culture.
Let's say you're attending an event that's based in a culture that you don't belong to.
Like maybe a wedding in India?
Yeah, like that.
None of us would have any idea what that's like.
Miah and I were both part of a group of folks who were invited to Miah and Kraj Singh's sister's wedding in India, and I was able to go. I was not able to be at the wedding because I got sick. This was one of the experiences, I think, that got both of us thinking a lot about this. Miah and Kraj was so excited to dress us up in saris. In America, white girl wearing a sari is like one of the first don't do this examples.
I was terrified of looking like Gwyneth Paltrow at this wedding. And it took quite a few people to talk me down from that panic. Where
Where I ended up is like, okay, Miah and Kraj is the one inviting us, and also the man runs a fashion house and knows about these things. If Miah and Kraj says the appropriate formal wear for this wedding is a sari, and it doesn't matter who you are, or that you're a foreigner, or that you're a white person, great, I'm wearing a sari.
trying to find a Western style dress that wouldn't look just sad in comparison to all of these beautiful, beautiful pieces of art that everyone else would be wearing.
We would have stuck out even more in Western clothes. Like,
We would have.
And it would have been basically more disrespectful
It would have been
to not wear the correct formal wear for the occasion we were attending.
It would have been the equivalent of attending like an American wedding in a potato sack dress.
Let's say you get invited to a black tie wedding and you show up in cargo shorts.
And there is a huge difference between taking it back home and pulling it out of its context and going into...
That is called Orientalism.
Yes, it is. And going into a space and being invited into a space and fully engaging with the experience and with the culture and with what's being offered to you and what you're being welcomed into.
This is one of the major pet peeves that comes into the, like, white girl wearing a sari trope. Are you wearing it right?
Yeah, there's a lot of wrong ways to fold a sari, apparently. I remember doing some research when we were getting ready for the wedding, and I still don't know. My whole plan was to just stand there and make Miah Grace do it.
That's basically what
me.
happened when Miah Grace was deciding what he wanted, like what he thought would suit us. Like, we didn't do anything, we stood. There is nothing so singularly frustrating as seeing someone getting praise for doing your cultural practice badly. I came across a challah recipe that had milk in it. Keeping kosher means that you don't have dairy and meat at the same meal. Challah is dairy-free, so you can have it at the same meal as you have meat if you're keeping kosher. Why would you put milk in challah?
I fully dated someone, and the first time I went into his bedroom, first thing I see on his wall is this crappy, taped together, like, arts and craft headdress thing. And I'm like, hey buddy, what's this thing on your wall? And he proceeds to tell me all about how it was a school project that he did, and he got a great grade, and you know, it was just such a nice cultural research moment, and he's so happy that he can share my culture with me. This glued together thing that you made in 5th grade is not something worth applauding.
Throw the crappy craft project out and the man with it.
I did, actually. I threw the man out at least. But the thing I find so disturbing about that whole situation is that, like, he got a good grade on it, and, like, the authorities in his life, like, the teachers told him that it was good.
Did the originating culture get proper credit and compensation for whatever the thing is? You gotta appreciate the labor that goes into it, and hopefully, like, you want people from that culture to benefit from making the beautiful things.
Whenever you look at Indigenous done beadwork, it is so meticulously put together. It does not fall apart. There are tiny little knots put in between everything so that when it's stitched down, if one thing pops off, it doesn't all just come cascading out, because every bead is precious and you don't want to lose any of your hard work. The appropriated and the crappy versions of it, like, sometimes it's literally like sand, like colored sand glued to something to try to mimic the texture and the look of it. Because it takes a lifetime to really perfect a lot of these skills. And those people deserve to have the means to pour into keeping those skills alive.
Get pieces from the originating culture, good quality from artists that are being well compensated from their work. Pieces like this can be an investment.
A lot of silver and stonework jewelry that is made to last generations. Like, your great grandkids are gonna be given the ring you bought. So this is a lot of questions, and they all definitely intersect with each other, and it probably would be easier to just have a tiny person in your pocket to ask.
You get to develop into the tiny person in your pocket that you can ask.
You're your own tiny person.
You are your own fashion guardian angel.
Are you my conscience?
But that is actually how it works, is every time you ask yourself questions like this, you get a little bit better at it.
Then it just becomes part of who you are.
You understand the thing you love better. You don't necessarily have to agonize over, can I wear these earrings? Does wanting to wear these earrings make me a bad person? If it turns out that those earrings maybe aren't the thing for you to wear, you can maybe find a set that will make you just as happy, but are the thing for you to wear. Okay, so where do Halloween costumes fit into this?
I mean, it's kind of in the name. It is a costume. It is not clothing.
When somebody asks you about your Halloween costume, they're asking you, who or what are you dressed as?
So by nature, a lot of them are just a caricature.
Somebody who doesn't necessarily know you should be able to look at your costume for a minute and go, oh, this person is dressed as this mythological figure, or this pop culture character, or this public figure that maybe needs to be taken down a peg.
That, like, 2-second interaction doesn't leave a lot of time for nuance.
There's one particular example of a Halloween costume that comes to mind in the movie Moana. The costume had, like, this sheer overshirt with, like, fake tattoos drawn on it. As far as I know, Maori tattooing is a very closed practice.
Deeply closed.
Not only is it not for outsiders, it's definitely not for outsiders to put on temporarily and then take off when they're done with it.
Most Indigenous and First Nations tattoo practices are sacred and secretive enough that, like, when I did my Quanah chasing horse video, I didn't even refer to the method that her facial tattoos were done in using proper terminology, because I didn't want to put language in people's mouths who weren't going to use it properly and who that language was not for. Like, it is a very serious thing.
How a lot of Halloween costumes are created, they're not made with any consideration of open or closed practices, and often without any knowledge of what open or closed practices are.
Executive at Disney said, we need to make Moana Halloween costumes that will sell this Halloween season, and the person that was handed that assignment did exactly that. It just got replicated from animation to fabric.
I think the shirt in question was meant to mimic, like, the look of a person who wasn't wearing a shirt, and the character had a darker skin tone, and so the shirt had a darker skin tone.
No, you're right, because it had muscle structure to it. Baby's first blackface.
Yeah, Halloween costumes are made to stand out.
With Halloween costume parties, it is almost expected that there will be a contest associated with it. When you're standing out in a Halloween costume, it is entirely surface level.
This is why a Halloween costume is not a good moment to be wearing something from another culture or a marginalized group that you're not part of.
The very nature of a Halloween costume just doesn't fit the conditions for respectful usage. The interviews and the documentaries and the conversations that have happened around this, it really does stop at this upsets people, this hurts people's feelings, and this is objectively wrong. And then when you'll look at the comments and you'll look at the people who are talking about it afterwards to try to understand more, they'll have a lot of these questions of, I would wear a sari to a wedding, or why can this person dress like a Viking?
Or what about kilts? Things like that. What can you do with that energy on the other 364 days of the year?
You can think really hard about what it is about that outfit or that cultural garment that is drawing you to it. Is it the craftsmanship? Is it the fringes? A lot of the Party City costumes for Indigenous-ish things, they're always covered in fringe, and they basically just look like a variation of a flapper dress. You might want to consider 1920s aesthetic.
The dresses are almost always made out of leather or suede.
True.
Maybe you need to take up leatherworking.
There's also a lot of bright colors associated with it and beautiful embroidery. If you are at all attracted to Indigenous jewelry artists would love for you to support them. I think it's really worth thinking about like how you could work these things into your day-to-day style, because if you're attracted to it and you want to support these artists, you might as well give them as much advertising as possible.
There are going to be other items of cultural clothing that it is not possible to do that with because it is a closed practice in some way. And so that's where like asking yourself these questions and doing this research and this learning comes in, because then you can sort of look and find and say, okay, I think this particular thing is really beautiful, but it turns out that that's a closed practice. What would I be able to buy from an artist or maker of this culture that would be appropriate for me to wear?
Having stories behind the clothing that you wear makes it so much more fulfilling. Like, it's really cool to be able to point something out on your outfit and be like, yeah, this is a dupatta. This is from India. I got this on a trip, and look at the craftsmanship, and here's the significance of the colors that are used. That's cool to be able to do.
If somebody is asking about your version of it because they haven't seen it in its original context, you don't want to misrepresent it. You want to be able to explain it well and in a way that does credit to the people who made it.
Be a good ambassador, so to speak.
I worry that, like, people are afraid of learning those stories because they think all they're going to turn up are reasons why they shouldn't wear something beautiful.
And that shame really does make me sad, because there are so many artisans and craftspeople who are trying to unpack that and get people to kind of like take some baby steps towards them and engage with what they're making.
If people are afraid that their only options are never wear anything from a different background or being racist, these artists who make their living off of selling decorative arts from their region or their culture or their background are going to have a much harder time making a living doing it.
Because that's a much smaller pool of people to be selling to.
Liking something from another culture does not make you a bad person. You don't have to be ashamed of thinking it's pretty. That is honestly something to celebrate. The thing to think about is, how can you direct that energy? What can you do with it that uplifts that culture?
And it really is a beautiful thing to look outside of yourself, find something to be interested and invested in. And there's so many ways to be interested and invested in something that don't involve Halloween. I just don't see that kind of depth or appreciation happening for something that you're gonna wear one time and then throw away.
Don't wear the thing as a Halloween costume. Halloween costumes are for big, outlandish cultural tropes. Dress up as a politician that needs to be taken down a peg.
Matt Gaetz would like to.
Do find something from another culture whose decorative arts you appreciate that you can wear every day. And when people ask you about it and tell you it's pretty, you can say, thanks. This is the story behind it. That is cultural appreciation.
Getting to gush about the gorgeous thing that you've researched and share it with other people the same way that it was shared with you. Yes, that is 100% cultural appreciation.
This is the artist I bought it from, and this is the story they told me, and this is the conversation I had with them.
And
like,
here's
this is why they
Etsy.
said this piece is the one that I should take home. That's the thing that we need to not let fear of doing something wrong hold us back from engaging with. We don't just costume on Halloween. Where can the good people find you around the internet?
Well, I am Miah Grace Sews on Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel by the same name where I post tutorials for free PDF sewing patterns that are specifically made for people in alternative fashion and dipping their toes into professional costuming. And my main channel is Miah Grace, where I do a lot of fashion content.
And you also do some of the best, like, fashion and costuming commentary I've ever seen. So if you like my rants about past social issues in the world of fashion, you will love Miah talking about current ones.
While I bring my ego back down.
Back down from being 5'10" all the way up there.
You like held it over your head, so it was like here for me.
I can be found around the internet at Miss SnappyDragon, Instagram, Facebook, very occasionally TikTok.
Wherever your dragons are locally or ethically sourced and sold.
Ethically sourced? Tell us what you are planning on wearing for Halloween down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to click the button to tell YouTube you liked what you saw, and the bell if you want to maybe take your chances with notifications if YouTube feels like doing its job. Should you be interested in more fashion history commentary and sass, hit the subscribe button because that is what we do on this channel. You should also go over there and hit the subscribe button on Miah's channels because that's what she does there too.
If you liked this video, be sure to like it so more awesome people like you can see it.
I'm pretty sure we have Halloween costumes to work on, so we should probably stop talking and go do that. We'll see you next time.
Bye, friends!
You were right. My budget was not prepared. There are so many pretty things.
But isn't this so much better than feeling bad about yourself or accidentally doing a racism?
Are you asking me or my clothing budget?